Emily Carter had always been shy. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, she learned early that quiet people were often overlooked, but that didn't stop her from observing the world closely. When she moved to New York City, she found work as a waitress in a cozy cafe tucked between tall office buildings. The cafe attracted all kinds of people: office workers rushing for coffee, tourists looking for comfort food, and sometimes wealthy guests who stood out from the crowd. Emily did her job well, but she avoided conversations whenever possible, keeping her head down and her voice soft. One rainy afternoon, the cafe door opened, and a man in an expensive suit walked in, holding the arm of an elderly woman. Even without knowing who he was, it was clear he was rich. His watch gleamed under the lights, and his posture carried confidence. The woman beside him, however, seemed nervous. She looked around carefully, her hands clasped together. Emily noticed something else. When the man spoke to her, she didn't respond. They were seated near the window. As Emily approached the table, the man ordered for both of them without asking his mother what she wanted. The woman smiled politely but looked down. Emily felt a familiar tug in her chest. Years ago, her own grandmother had been deaf, and Emily had learned sign language just to talk with her. That knowledge had stayed with her like a hidden treasure. When Emily returned with water, she gently looked at the elderly woman and signed, "Hello. How are you today?" The woman froze, then her eyes widened in shock. Slowly, her face broke into a warm, emotional smile. She signed back, her hands shaking slightly, "Thank you for talking to me." The man, Lucas, stopped mid-sip. He stared at Emily, confused at first, then stunned. He hadn't seen his mother react like that in a public place in years. Usually, she sat quietly, passed over by servers who assumed she wouldn't understand. Emily continued signing, asking what she would like to eat. The woman answered confidently, finally able to express herself. Emily relayed the order to Lucas, who nodded silently, still processing the moment unfolding before him. Other customers began to notice. The soft clinking of dishes and low chatter faded as people realized something meaningful was happening. Emily wasn't just taking an order, she was giving someone a voice. As Emily walked back to the counter, Lucas watched his mother laugh softly to herself, her posture suddenly relaxed. A heavy feeling settled in his chest. Despite all his wealth and success, he realized he had failed to do what this shy waitress did so naturally: connect. Emily returned with the food, signing patiently and kindly. The elderly woman reached out and held Emily's hand for a brief moment, gratitude shining in her eyes. Emily smiled back, blushing slightly. Lucas felt his throat tighten. In that simple cafe, surrounded by strangers, his world shifted. He didn't know it yet, but this quiet act of kindness was about to change all of their lives forever. Lucas sat silently for a moment, watching his mother eat with a peace he hadn't seen in years. She smiled to herself as Emily occasionally stopped by the table, signing small questions: "Is everything okay? Do you need anything else?" Each time, his mother responded eagerly, her eyes bright, her hands moving with confidence. The cafe no longer felt loud or overwhelming to her. For the first time in a long while, she felt included. Finally, Lucas stood up. His chair scraped softly against the floor, drawing attention from nearby tables. He cleared his throat, clearly emotional. "I need everyone here to hear this," he said. The cafe grew quiet. He looked at Emily, then at his mother. "My name is Lucas Bennett. I'm a businessman, and I've spent my life building companies and chasing success. But today, I realized how little that means if you forget the people standing right in front of you." He motioned gently toward his mother and spoke slowly so Emily could sign for her. "My mother lost her hearing years ago. Since then, most people speak over her, not to her. I do the same sometimes, without even realizing it." His voice cracked slightly, and this young woman gave her something priceless: respect. Emily felt her cheeks burn as all eyes turned to her. She tried to step back, but Lucas raised his hand kindly. "Please don't be embarrassed. What you did was brave." He turned to his mother, tears filling his eyes. Emily signed his words carefully. The elderly woman reached for her son's hand and squeezed it, signing back that she was proud of him. Lucas wiped his eyes and continued, "I never learned sign language. I thought providing comfort and money was enough. Today, Emily showed me I was wrong. A few customers nodded, others quietly wiped away tears. He turned fully to Emily. Do you know how rare your kindness is? He asked gently. Emily shook her head, barely able to speak. I grew up with a deaf grandmother, she whispered. She taught me to see people differently. Lucas smiled through his tears. Then please let me help you the way you helped my mother. He explained that he wanted to pay for Emily's education and support her dream of becoming a language interpreter. The room broke into applause. Some people stood. The cafe owner pressed a hand to his heart. Emily signed the words to Lucas's mother, who began crying openly. She pulled Emily into a warm hug, signing, "You made me feel human again." Emily held her gently, tears of her own falling freely. In that ordinary cafe in New York, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about listening without sound, speaking without words, and discovering that sometimes the quietest actions can leave the loudest impact. The days after that afternoon in the cafe passed quickly, but for Emily, nothing felt the same. Lucas kept his word. Within a week, he returned, not in a suit this time, but dressed simply, as if he wanted to blend in. With him was his mother, smiling warmly the moment she saw Emily. They had come not as customers, but as people with purpose. Lucas explained that he had arranged meetings with a local college that offered programs in sign language interpretation and accessibility services. Emily listened in disbelief as he described scholarships, flexible schedules, and support she never thought would be possible. For someone who had always lived quietly, accepting help felt overwhelming. But when she looked at Lucas's mother, gently signing "You deserve this," Emily felt her fears soften. Enrollment day arrived faster than she expected. Emily stood on the college campus, clutching her acceptance letter with trembling hands. The girl who once avoided eye contact now stepped into classrooms filled with future interpreters, educators, and advocates. For the first time, her quiet nature didn't feel like a weakness, it felt like a strength. She listened deeply, observed carefully, and learned quickly. Lucas, inspired by Emily, began taking sign language classes himself. It wasn't easy for him. His hands moved stiffly, and he often made mistakes. Still, his mother never laughed at him. Instead, she corrected him patiently, pride glowing in her eyes. Their conversations, once limited and strained, slowly grew richer. They laughed together more. They argued occasionally too, something Lucas realized they had never truly done before. Communication, even imperfect, was transforming their relationship. Months later, the cafe hosted a small event. It was Lucas's idea. He invited members of the local deaf community, cafe staff, and regular customers. Emily was asked to stand at the front, not as a waitress, but as an interpreter. Her heart pounded as she translated speeches, introductions, and stories. When Lucas stepped forward and signed his short message himself, the room erupted in applause. "I used to think silence meant emptiness," Lucas said, his signs careful but sincere. "Now I know it can be full of meaning." Emily translated, her hands steady, her confidence clear. Lucas's mother was the last to speak. She signed slowly, allowing Emily to follow every word. "I spent years feeling invisible," she said. "One young woman looked at me and truly saw me. Because of her, my son learned to listen. Because of kindness, our lives changed." Emily felt tears run down her cheeks, but she didn't stop signing. That night, when the event ended and the cafe lights dimmed, Emily stepped outside into the cool New York air. She looked up at the glowing city skyline and took a deep breath. She was still shy, still soft-spoken, but she was no longer unseen. Sometimes, change doesn't begin with noise or power. Sometimes, it begins with a simple gesture, two hands moving gently, saying, "I hear you," even without sound.